I'm Harriet Frew, eating disorder therapist, teacher and podcaster, and you're about to start healing from your eating disorder and transforming your life and your relationship with food and body. I've worked in NHS and private practice supporting clients for 20 years, and I believe that recovery is possible for you. This podcast dives into expert interviews, evidence-based psychological approaches, and anecdotal tips from the therapy room from my years of experience. If you're wanting to heal your relationship with food, feel confident in your body, develop self-love and self-acceptance, and create a life of freedom and meaning, then this podcast is for you. Thank you for being here.
So today I have a guest on the show and I'm talking to Jane Reagan. Jane is a Boulder, Colorado-based registered dietitian nutritionist who believes that understanding food choices, food quality, and one's relationship with food can lead to greater awareness, improved health, and a more abundant life. Jane is passionate about helping her clients find greater health, vitality, and improved wellness through balanced nutrition. She understands that food is meant to be enjoyed and loves helping people connect to the wisdom of their own bodies while providing guidance with evidence-based practices for optimal nutrition. Jane Reagan's experience in the field of nutrition and counselling spans 25 years. Jane has helped thousands of clients understand how food impacts them physically, mentally, and emotionally with a food-first philosophy. In addition to her private practice in Boulder, Colorado, Jane Reagan is the creator of the Eating Disorder Recovery Roadmap for Parents, an online program which brings her decades of in-person nutritional and counselling expertise to a remote learning solution that allows parents who have a child of any age with an eating disorder to understand and successfully navigate the complex journey to recovery. In the episode today, Jane does a deep dive into her eating disorder recovery program for parents. She explores how lonely and isolating it is as a parent when you have a loved one struggling. She talks about helpful and unhelpful ways of coping and communicating. She is a beacon of hope and support for all parents struggling and is incredibly passionate about whole family support along the recovery road. Let's get to the conversation. So before I delve into this week's episode, I just want to let you know that I have started writing on Substack. If you would like to read about eating disorders and disordered eating, if you want tips and skills from the therapy room, if you want to improve your relationship with food, I'm going to be writing twice a week on Substack. You can subscribe there and get my regular articles. And for every article I am writing, I'm also doing an audio to accompany it. So it's almost like a little extra free podcast. If you are interested to subscribe, do go to the link in the show notes and you can sign up, and hope to see some of you over there. Hi, Jane. Welcome to the Eating Disorder Therapist podcast.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, so great to have you here. We've just been having a really good old chat, haven't we, offline, which has been really nice. Yes. So you're all the way across the ocean in the US and you live in Boulder in Colorado. So can you give people in the UK particularly, I mean, we've got a lot of US listeners as well, but for the benefit of the UK listeners, can you tell us a bit more about what it's like where you are and a bit about the terrain and the kind of feel of the place?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say, I'm so happy to be on this podcast with you because I love the UK. And I was telling you, I went to school there a long time ago and lived right downtown London. And I just have such a fondness for being in the UK. So I live in Boulder, Colorado. My name's Jane Reagan. And Colorado is full of the Rocky Mountains. And if you think of John Denver, you know his songs and Rocky Mountain High, and it's a lot of big mountains, blue sky, a lot of outdoors, a lot of activity. It's a really fun place to be. And I've lived here in Boulder for 27 years.
Yeah, no, amazing. So Denver's in Colorado as well, is it? Is that what they used to film like Dynasty back in the 80s?
Probably, yes. And yeah, Denver is about 25 minutes from Boulder. So It's just kind of right up over the hill.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, brilliant. Okay. And could you tell us a bit, Jane, about what you do? What's your role, your job in this field?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a registered dietitian, certified eating disorder specialist. And I also have a master's in counseling. So I primarily work with young adults, actually people of all ages and parents in regards to helping them, supporting them through an eating disorder and recovery and even prevention. I work with some other nutrition issues, but my practice mainly encompasses probably 80% of people who struggle with eating disorder issues in some way, disordered eating. And I've been in this field for 15 years in private practice. I also spent 10 years at a university here called the University of Colorado in Boulder. It's a big university, about 40,000 students in all, and was there for 10 years. I helped them start their eating disorders program. And I saw a lot of students of all ages, of course, in private practice too. And I saw a lot of parents who were struggling at the university and parents who were 2,000 miles away and really concerned about their kids. And even in my private practice, parents in the local community who didn't quite know how to support their child. Last year, I spent the whole year creating a program called the Eating Disorder Recovery Roadmap for Parents. It's an online program, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about it, but it's a way to help support parents in order for them to support their child.
Yeah, no, it sounds like an incredible resource because I think parents often feel very alone, don't they? And not knowing kind of how to help, where to begin. So, yeah, can you tell us a bit more about the program and different things that are in part of it?
Yeah, you're totally right on. And parents feel isolated. They don't know what to do. They feel panicked, especially when their child's health and life are at risk. They don't know where to turn. Some of them live in rural areas and don't have the resources available in their local area. I saw this so often, and I really saw that it came down to like parents not having the no fault of their own, but not having the education about eating disorders because eating disorders are really complex and complicated. And there are many contributing factors. And I'm a parent, 4 kids. I know you're a parent, and we know how busy we are. And parents have multiple jobs and multiple kids and aging parents that they're caring for, and they're trying to get food on the table. And it's really hard to figure out what to do. Like, what is the path to recovery for their child? Through this program, I created a recovery roadmap that parents actually create their own individualized roadmap for their child. And there are 9 different modules that are 60 to 90 minutes long that they can listen to on their own time because I know how busy parents are. There are 50 downloadable handouts that have all the kind of nuggets of information we go over in the modules so they can just have that as quick go-to resources. And then there's a weekly live group Zoom call every week where parents from all over the world, even I have a couple in the UK, can hop on and get support from me, from other parents. And it's really interesting when this group of parents, you'll have some parents that are further along in this process, some parents that are just starting out. And it's just wonderful to see how they can support each other. And it really makes the parent feel not so alone, as you said. It's scary. And a lot of parents feel despair and don't know what the next step should be. Or maybe their child was in treatment and now they're getting out and kind of where do we go from here? All of those different stages we talk about and what to do. And then there's also a Facebook group where parents can connect with each other outside of the Zoom call if they want. And I launched this last November. So I'm hoping to just continue to grow the community and be able to touch and help as many parents as possible.
Yeah, no, it sounds like an incredible resource and very much needed. And it sounds like there's been a good sort of take up. You've had a lot of people interested, actually, because I think there's a lot of people feeling very alone and desperate and struggling when their loved one's suffering.
Yeah, no, I've had parents say, oh, why didn't I find this 6 months ago? Or some of my own clients have had their parents do it and they've come into session and say, oh, I can tell my dad is taking your program because he is asking me different questions and it's really helping me. And what I saw was that, and we know through research that parents do not cause eating disorders. There's many factors. But what I do see is that parents can really help their child move more quickly towards a better balanced life, healthier life, or sometimes they can make it more challenging. So what I really want parents to do is to learn to ally for their child, because I think that helps the most. And when I was creating this program, I actually did a lot of interviews of my clients and then separate parents, and I would ask them the same questions. And for kids, I said, what do you wish your parent knew? What's the thing that your parent says that makes you crazy, that makes things worse? What is the thing that's really helpful that your parent does? I asked all these questions. And I put this into my program. And every child I talked to said that even though they were pushing their parents away or being difficult, or that inside, they wanted to be closer to their parent. They just didn't know how. And the eating disorder wasn't about food. And they wanted their parent to know that. And it wasn't a choice. And they were struggling. They were in pain. They were suffering. There was something that was going on that was too much for them. And they turned to these eating disorder behaviors to kind of deal with that. And they wanted their parent to really understand, but they were young, right? Our kids are young and they don't have the decades of experience that we have as parents. And they didn't know how to express what they were going through. They didn't know what to do, but they wanted their parents' help. That's what I saw over and over again.
Yeah, and it's so helpful to hear that. And I think as well as parents, if you see your child, teenager, older child suffering with an eating disorder, you do often think it's all about the food, don't you? And as a parent, you perhaps feel like you need to kind of really step in and be more directive around food or really get micro focused on the food.
Yeah.
I guess, like you're saying, in a way, eating disorders aren't always about the food, are they? And so can you say a bit more about that, really? Like a bit more about how
Yeah. I will tell parents, like, the best thing that they can do is not talk about the food, because it's not about the food. They're trying to control the food, and maybe they've been through some type of trauma or situation that's really challenging, and they have a lot of fear, or they have a lot of sadness, they have anxiety, but instead of talking about dealing with it, they start controlling their food. And so we have to remember that even when it looks like it's about the food, there's another layer underneath. Trying to get the food just right isn't really helpful. So for parents to pull back and not go down that path with them, but really connect with them on a heart level. What's going on in their life? How are they feeling? What's happening for them? And it is hard not to look just at the surface. And the other thing that kids will tell me is if someone is really underweight and they weight restore, that they feel like their parents aren't going to be as concerned about them. And sometimes they stay at that lower weight, or it's hard to recover because then people don't notice, right? And if they can't talk about it, sometimes losing weight and having people see that something's wrong is the only way they can communicate. And so we don't want kids to have to stay at a low weight in order to communicate to the outside world that I'm not okay.
Yeah, no, so true. And I think sadly that's quite common, isn't it? People sometimes feel like I have to be sick, or I have to be really thin, I have to visibly show someone I'm in distress, actually, because of it's often too hard to say it through words, isn't it?
Yeah.
And sadly, society reinforces it, doesn't it? Because sometimes, well, when someone does do some weight restoration, then everyone just assumes, oh, they must be fine. Everyone takes a step back, and then the person is left really struggling when they're probably even more vulnerable, aren't they?
Yeah, and if some of the research that's out there, one of the studies shows that of all eating disorder types, only 6% are actually underweight. There are a lot of kids out there that are struggling that look like, and adults too, right? That look like they're fine, that you would never know everything that's going on inside. It's important for us as parents to look beyond that and really connect with our kids and know what's going on. I see a lot of situations where kids are busy, maybe they're in high school or college, and it's hard to find that time to connect. And we want to do that before it gets too bad, before it becomes a real problem.
Yeah, no, sure.
Yeah.
Did you want to talk a little bit about kind of prevention as well? Because I know that part of your course or the way you work as well is trying to support parents perhaps before things get too bad, or sowing those seeds early on to support.
Right. So I think prevention, from a parent's perspective, one is about education is a huge piece, and about just noticing, obviously, if your child has any significant weight changes, it's normal when kids grow up to have some weight fluctuations. That's normal. But if you see significant weight changes, to kind of make you think, like, I wonder what else is going on there. And if your child is skipping meals, if your child is so careful about foods, if your child is hoarding food, if there's a lot of emphasis around food, wondering what's going on, and body image too, and exercise. It's not just food. With exercise, if you notice that your child is going to exercise a lot over and over again, or if they're very concerned about their body. Now that's hard for teenagers who are concerned about their bodies changing. But if you notice something that's more extreme, just pay attention and start talking about it, because these eating disorders live in isolation, and they live when we don't talk about them. And then they kind of fester and they grow and they become more. And it's a slippery slope. What turns out is maybe a diet that somebody tries all of a sudden slips into being very specific about food, counting everything. And all of a sudden someone falls into an eating disorder. And we can't really tell who's going to go on a diet and have that happen and who's not. Some people could go on a diet and they get off and kind of back to where they were. Other people just kind of go down the rabbit hole. So it's really having that perspective, that education on what's going on with your child, reading as much as you can about eating disorders and the contributing factors. Some of the contributing factors include our diet culture, inaccurate nutrition information. There's tons of inaccurate nutrition information out there that has people eating in certain ways that kind of sets off this pattern. Peer pressure that our kids feel, traumas. I mean, I'm sure you see it too, like all of the different things that contribute to an eating disorder. Even genetics plays a role there. Educating yourself as a parent, working and looking at how you communicate with your child is also important. And there's one area that's sometimes a little touchy to talk about with parents, but their own beliefs in food and what they have learned through their family and their own parents and what they taught them and how maybe that's been passed down. One of the sections in my program is the way that parents unintentionally teach disordered eating. Because as parents, we want our kids to thrive and do their best, but I'm guilty too. There's things that I do that might not be helping my child in some area. Are there things that we could change and things that we need to look at for ourselves? I think that's also a challenging thing with eating disorders is that it kind of touches everyone in the family, including siblings. And then another aspect, I would say, of kind of this treatment and prevention is getting a team together. That is one of the things through my program that I've become more aware of is how challenging that has been for many parents. But that knowing that it's so important to get a team of providers, some type of therapist, nutritionist, a medical provider, and then finding the right kind of providers, that I have been amazed at how hard that's been for parents and how critical that can be to really move their child more quickly towards a healthier place.
Time for a short advertisement break. Are you a counsellor, dietitian, therapist, nutritionist, personal trainer, or other mental health professional? Are you seeing increasing numbers of your clients struggling with eating disorders and disordered eating? And are you keen to learn skills and strategies and build confidence in working with your clients who struggle with these issues? We know that increasing numbers of people are struggling with eating disorders, and we know that 85% of people with eating disorders are not underweight, and this means that many eating disorder symptoms are hidden. The Good Childhood Report in 2021 highlights appearance as a leading cause of unhappiness among young people and indicates that appearance concerns are increasing year upon year. So join my Eating Disorders Training Day on Zoom, face-to-face, or self-paced online. It will give you a really good understanding about the different types of eating disorders, including anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorder, and OSFED, with an introduction to RFED and neurodiversity in eating disorders. You'll explore typical causes of eating disorders and understand how to create a psychological formulation for your client, and this will be brought to you by relating to client examples. I will take you through then my specific knowledge, skills, and techniques, which can be used when supporting clients with eating disorders. You will get a full comprehensive training manual and access to the recording of the training afterwards and a full online version of the course. If you want to sign up, please go to the eatingdisordertherapist.co.uk, and you might also be interested in my body image training for professionals too.
Yeah, no, sure. I mean, there's definitely a problem a lot in the UK sometimes, just being able to kind of access the support, because there's so much more awareness now, isn't there? But we haven't often got the services to actually meet the need. Now people are more aware.
Yeah, and there's a lot of providers that their area isn't eating disorders. They don't really know or focus on that, and finding a provider that does specialize in eating disorders. And I think one of the reasons I made my program be an online resource is that all those people that don't have access to providers, that live in areas that don't have the people that they need, I wanted to be able to reach them and know that they can get this education, they can get this weekly support from their own home at any time.
Yeah, and it sounds incredible. So tell us a bit more about the program and some of the modules. I guess a big question, but give us a bit of a taste.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are 3 parts to it. And the first part is 2 modules, and it's called Reframe Your Understanding. And it's really about helping parents understand how their child developed an eating disorder, or what are the factors that would contribute to an eating disorder if you're wondering if your child has one. And the second module is kind of the many faces of eating disorders, because as we were just talking about, just looking at someone, we can't always tell. Usually we can't tell at all. The different eating disorders that are out there, anorexia, bulimia, compulsive overeating. And I talk about one called orthorexia. I don't know if you all talk about that.
Yeah, no, we do. We're aware of that in the UK, really.
And this isn't a program for art. That is rather a big problem I see in this area, like in areas that are very health conscious. Sometimes it can and go to extreme. And this is not a program for ARFID, which is another type of eating disorder. The first two modules are kind of reframing their understanding, getting them more educated on the different facets of eating disorders. And then the middle part of the program are 4 modules, kind of assessing your situation. So parents can understand what's really going on with my child, because it's different for every child. And I see that in my practice. I'm sure you do too, that certain kids are impacted by social media more than others. Certain kids are impacted by peer pressure more, right? And so really trying to take stock in your child's reality and what's going on for them. And then a whole module on what your child wishes you knew, how to best help them, how to best communicate with them. Another module in that section on nutrition. The nutrition one I could have talked to for a long time. That was one of the longer modules of 90 minutes. But how do you tackle all those nutrition issues and some kind of nutrition basics? And when do you use a meal plan versus intuitive eating? And what do I do before, during, and after meals? How do I support my child? And each module, there's little weekly awareness activities that kind of like homework, mini homework for parents, just to gain more insight. And then the last module in that section is on exercise and body image, right? And like how to recognize extreme exercise behaviors, what to do about, even like what to do about how to talk to a coach or someone else in your child's life who's part of their exercise picture. And as parents, help our kids with body image and body dysmorphia, and especially when our society gives us all these expectations that are usually unrealistic. And our kids are on social media all the time. And what do we do with that? The last part is the last 2 modules is about creating your roadmap. And I actually have one of the handouts is a picture of a roadmap, kind of like an old game here called Candyland or Chutes and Ladders. It was a kind of board game with a little roadmap. And so there's stops along the way, and parents can understand which stop is the one that they really need to focus on. And those stops change as you move more towards recovery. So they can kind of lay that out for themselves. And then the last module is really completing that. And then what if your child needs treatment, or what if your child needs retreatment? How do you prevent relapse? And what are the signs that maybe your child might be relapsing? And what is the difference between partial recovery versus full recovery? I get a lot of clients who kind of get to partial recovery, like they're doing okay, but they're not really thriving. And how do you make that last kind of jump into really owning your life and recovering from the eating disorder and moving on? And then I have a last module, a 9th one, because I had to do this one on eating disorders in college because I worked at a college for 10 years. That's the last module. So it's very comprehensive. I wanted to think of maybe a parent also from a counseling and nutrition perspective, like what are the things that I want parents to know so they can help their child and really help themselves and help their other kids. Because sometimes behaviors wear off in families, and all of a sudden a sibling starts doing something that another child was doing, and the parents going, oh no.
Yeah, no, well, thanks for talking us through. I mean, it sounds like a very detailed, comprehensive roadmap and just like all of your knowledge and resources kind of poured into it. So, I mean, yeah, it sounds incredible. Thank you for sharing it. And can you tell us a bit more about where people go wrong in terms of, and I don't know, in the US, do you use, in the UK, we have something called the New Maudsley animal model. Have you heard of that? They talk about animal metaphors and rhinos and dolphins and ostriches, etc.
Not so much. No. I mean, I know the Maudsley method, but I don't know what that is, what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, sure. Well, no, tell us about the things that tend to go wrong for parents in their communication.
I think that I see, even when a parent knows that their child has an eating disorder, that in regards to the nutrition piece, they may still have the same behaviors with their own food, what they do with their food. So let's say a mom or a dad is on a diet, or they're being very restrictive with food, or kind of like, oh, I can't eat that. And it's different if someone has a food allergy. Like, I understand that you can't eat those foods, but it makes it hard for kids to try to get more comfortable with food if there's a lot of restrictive or judgments about food going on. And that can be kind of a funny thing for parents because, of course, there are foods that are more nutritious than other foods. That is true. But kind of having a little bit more leniency. Some parents can be very strict and not allow any type of, let's say, sugar in their house or any type of gluten or dairy. And maybe there are reasons for that, but I think we just have to be careful because I work a lot with creating more flexibility for our kids. So, and even if that's with exercise, here, this community I live in, and in the state, it's very outdoorsy and very exercise oriented, as are many other places in the US and the world. And sometimes there can be a rigidity in that area too, of like always having to exercise, even if you're tired, even if you're sick, really having kids be able to listen and honor themselves. And I always remind parents and kids, there was a time when you used to eat and you didn't think about it. You'd go outside, you were playing with your friends, or at recess, you'd come into your house, and if you were hungry, you'd have two snacks. And if you weren't hungry, you might not even have one. And it was not thought of. And now it's very different when someone has an eating disorder. It's all they think about. We want to kind of get back to that intuitive space of trusting their body. And through this process of developing eating disorder, they've kind of disconnected from their body signals and from their trust. And so it's building that trust back up. And that takes some time. I'm sure you see that too. Trust with understanding with food and how their body feels and dealing with all the things underneath that's kind of pushing them in this direction. I don't know if I answered your question.
Absolutely. Yeah. We talk about the best ways of like kind of communicating really. And you were sort of talking about, yeah. And what about for parents who are maybe their child is at college or maybe the child's in their 20s or a bit more kind of grown up now? They're going to be much more removed, aren't they, from the food side of things? What about more kind of general communication advice?
Yeah, that I saw so much, and it was really hard. And I've had kids in college too. And when they're sick or something's wrong, right, it's really hard to be so far away. And you feel like sometimes you want to be the helicopter parent and just swarm in there and fix everything, right? But we can't do that, right? They have to gain the knowledge of how to help themselves. So it's really staying connected, and maybe it's more Zoom calls, really understanding what they're going through. Maybe it's even flying out there and having some time together, like getting a pulse on what's happening with your child, even though they're far away. Thank goodness we have the ability to call and Zoom and be places quickly that we can still stay connected with our child. But with an older child, it is much more about being that ally. When they're younger, we can control things more. We can even tell them what to do when they're younger, but when they're older, it's more of that ally, that friend in a way, that confidant, rather than the hovering parent. What kids will tell me is, again, they want their parent there, but they also want space, and they have to figure out how to do it themselves because this is their child's recovery from this, not the parents'. The parent is just that kind of cheerleader, that support, that whether it's finding a team, helping them find their way, and just being a listener. Like one of the best things they can just do is listen more than they talk. Just listen to your kid and don't be judgmental. Like hear them out because they're not going to want to tell you if we're judging them.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? And it's often the hardest thing to do as a parent, isn't it? Like I think when you've got a child struggling of any age, your anxiety goes through the roof and you want to step in and fix and tell them what to do and leak your emotions everywhere. Actually, the most helpful thing sometimes is just to kind of listen and be empathetic, try and find out a bit more what's underneath maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. Listening, empathy, compassion, those things can go so far, right? Because a lot of kids feel like their parents are trying to tell them what to do, right? And they're trying to break away and find their own autonomy, and just being a sounding board, right? Tell me more. How is that impacting you? Like a lot of open-ended questions.
Yeah, they're sure.
That can make a big difference. Just little things can really make a shift for kids.
Yeah, they're sure. It's so interesting actually, because it sounds like your method is very aligned to like the animal metaphor Maudsley model. I just briefly go through that because I think you'll find it quite interesting. But they say over here, like, don't be the rhino. So the rhino tells the child what to do, is very directive. Don't be the jellyfish. The jellyfish leaks all their emotion everywhere and gets really anxious and sad and angry. Don't be the ostrich that ignores it. Don't be the kangaroo with the joey. That's like where you kind of really treat the person as a much younger child and try and protect them too much, but in quite a disempowering way. So you want to be the dolphin. The dolphin swims alongside, is very empathetic, listens, gives praise.
Oh my God, I love that so much. I can visualize all of those while you're saying that, right? And I think all of us as parents can really relate to that and understand at times how we've probably been all of those.
Definitely.
Yeah, me included. Yeah, but like what really is going to help our child? I love the dolphin. That's a lovely metaphor.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think to become the dolphin, sometimes you need to lock yourself in the bathroom and have a few deep breaths first.
I know. And you know what? Sometimes parents need, and I talk about this in my program too, about how they need to take care of themselves. Some of the best things we can do is take some space away, do what we need to do, bring in support for us, other providers, for our own well-being, because we're only going to be able to help our child as much as we can help ourselves and understand kind of what's going on for us. There's a lot of kind of provider burnout that I see, or parent burnout that happens, treatment burnout, that they get a lot of fatigue,
Yeah,
treatment
for
fatigue, parent
sure.
fatigue. It's very real. And parents get very tired, and eating disorders don't always get cured overnight. We know that it takes time. Sometimes it takes years. Another thing that parents don't realize when they're first starting out, like I've had parents ask me after a couple months, how come my child's not better? And I kind of say, well, okay, we kind of have to buckle in, and this is going to take a little while because it's so much a societal thing. There's so many contributing factors. It's not like they have an iron deficiency and you just give them some extra iron each day and they're better, right? It takes time. And there's generational things. And just to know that and to be there and to support them and to work on themselves. And I've seen great success stories, which is so wonderful to see that parents and kids who have gone through really hard times, and parents who have just said, this is the hardest thing I've ever gone through. And the things that my child has said to me has been so terrible. And yet you talk to them a year later and the transformation that has happened that just brings parents to tears, kids too, and their relationship is better, their insights, their awareness. It has really changed. And I would say to parents, if you're in a really tough spot right now and you're feeling like this is never going to get better, just keep swimming. Be the dolphin, just keep swimming, and that things do change, and just keep going and keep getting educated, keep getting support.
Yeah, and I think kind of great advice, isn't it? Really engaging with the long game, keep educating yourself, do the self-care, and sign up for your program.
There you go.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd love to have any of your listeners. It'd be great.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there will be people listening that will be so interested because of the support in the UK. We do have some, but there's still quite an absence of good support for parents and carers. It's so great to hear about your resource.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
So where can people find you, Jane, if they want to get in touch with you, find out about the program,
Yep.
etc.?
There is a website for my program, which is www.parentsroadmap.com, parents plural, roadmap.com. That goes right to my website, to the parent page, and gives you all sorts of information. There's different tiers for pricing. I made it really reasonable price-wise. So if parents want just the modules, they can do that for a nominal fee every month. If they want the modules plus the handouts plus the weekly Zoom calls, there's a fee for that. And then if they want all of that plus 3 one-on-one sessions, they can do that. So all this information, there's a video that tells about it. They can hop on a phone call with me or Zoom call. They just put that information, and you'll see where if you want to have a chat session and talk about the program and talk about your child, we can do that. That's free. So lots of ways to connect. And my website is www.janereagan. It's Reagan, Reagan, and then the word nutrition. So JaneReaganNutrition.com. And then it will talk about my other services and all sorts of information and phone numbers and emails and all of that. So yeah, I would love to hear from any of your listeners.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I shall make sure that all of those links are in the show notes. That'll be great. And I'm sure people will be in touch.
Yeah, this has been so great. So nice to talk to you. And I know that wherever people are in the world, it's this same type of struggle, whether in the US or Europe or South America or Asia. Eating disorders are worldwide and similar struggles. They might look a little different family to family, country to country, but not really. There's some really very, very similar threads through all of it.
Yeah, no, so true. Well, thank you so much, Jane. It's been amazing to connect with you. I really enjoyed the conversation. I know the listeners are going to get so much value. So thank you so much.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
So I hope you enjoyed this conversation just as much as I did. Do go and check out all of Jane's details in the show notes. If you're not following me already on Instagram, do seek me out, the eating disorder therapist _. And for further support with your relationship with food, go to the eatingdisordertherapist.co.uk. You might also be interested to read my articles on Substack, which also have an audio version there. So if you'd like more tips, skills from the therapy room and you enjoy this podcast, you will like my Substack too. If you enjoy this podcast, I would be so grateful if you follow, rate and review, as it helps it reach so many more listeners. Thank you so much for listening today, and I look forward to sharing another podcast episode with you very soon.